Here we go. Here we go. All right. All right. Now, so for all of you, you should have to accept that message. Can everyone see that? Yeah. Thanks so much, Julia, for pointing that out to me. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to back up and we're going to start at the beginning again, just to make sure everyone can get the recording and see where we started. All right. So welcome again. This is a webinar which is about presenting your conference presentation in English. It's so exciting to see you today. My name is Mary Burch Harmon, as I said, and I'm an English language fellow. I'm based here in the US, and I worked in Brazil briefly last year, and I'm now working online. So you can use my presentation as an example of a presentation, a virtual presentation today. Okay, you can give me some pointers at the end and tell me how I did. Okay. Okay, so today we're going to focus on, let's start all over again. Today we're going to focus on the overall structure that you might use when you're giving a presentation in English, and also look at specifically the parts of the presentation in English. Okay? From there, I hope to look at some example phrases that you might use if you're focusing on a different part or each part of the presentation. Okay? Like I said, my background is as an English language teacher, so I'm going to give you some tools that you can use when you actually go to a presentation. All right? And then we're going to review some important steps that you need to pay attention to as you get ready to give your presentation. Okay? And also discuss some tips for you to be successful when you deliver your presentation. I'm also going to point out some things, some mistakes to avoid, all right, as they're always there, right? And then finally, in the second hour, I hope that you have time to look at some sample presentations with a partner and to discuss some of your thoughts about how they did in their presentations, okay? So I said at the beginning, you're welcome to turn on your cameras and just leave your microphones off for right now. I am a real live person, so it's nice to see your faces while we're going along. Okay, so I'm guessing that maybe some of you are preparing for international conference presentations, and maybe let's hope maybe recently you got an email which said you've been accepted, right? You've been accepted for a presentation. Okay. And maybe you feel like, yes, you know, I finally did it. I got accepted for this presentation, but what do I do now, right? Maybe this is now a panic because you have to get ready for your presentation and you have to know how to deliver your presentation. So my thought today is to really give you some tools that you can use so that you can get ready for your presentation and feel very confident about what you're presenting when you come to an international conference. Okay, so let's hope we can get there. Okay, so the good thing is that if you've been accepted to present at an international conference, the idea is probably that you have some sense, some idea of what the structure of academic writing is in English. And I'll show you in a moment why I mentioned this. Okay, so if you have been accepted, if you've been doing a little bit of research in English, if you've been doing a lot of research in English, maybe you're very familiar already with the form and maybe you know what the structure is already. I'll just point out some key points, okay? So often the structure is that you might have something like a title page. You might then have to do your abstract or your introduction. After that, you might have a literature review. You might then have the research design and methodology as part of your paper, okay? From there, you might go into conclusions. And then finally, you might have a reference list, okay? these are kind of the main points that we cover in research documents when we're writing a thesis or a dissertation, or you want to write an actual, you want to make a proposal about something, you often include a lot of these different points, okay? So if you're familiar with them, you're in luck, because presentations in English are very similar, have very similar points, and have very similar components that you could use and transfer over to your presentation, okay? If you're thinking about English, academic English in more general terms, okay, you're maybe simply familiar with giving an introduction when you start writing, then going to the body paragraphs, which support whatever your thesis is or whatever you said in your introduction. And then from there, it might be that you have a conclusion, okay? So this is just kind of the overall, more informal formats for academic English, okay? Academic writing. Yes, Bianca, are you there? Sorry.
Yes, I am. Sorry to interrupt you. Just we already have 50 participants, so you can go live on YouTube if you'd like.
Okay. All right. So let's do that. So I have to come back in 1 second. We're gonna go live, people. Are you ready? Yeah, is everybody ready? Maybe? So just give me 1 moment to go live. Yeah. All right. And sorry, 1 more second. Somebody can sing for us while we're waiting? No? No? Come on. Okay. Here we go. 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 And now I can hear myself. Okay. All right. So we are live. Make sure your hair looks okay. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I'll turn off my microphone and back. All right. Here we go. So just to go back to this point, so a little bit more informal writing in English still follows a structure of having an introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind, because a presentation in English is going to follow the same format. And a lot of it is going to depend on what your time limit is, what the conference is asking you to cover, okay? And if you got accepted to give your presentation at an international conference, they will have very specific parameters, very specific rules for you to follow, okay? So just so you know, I'm kind of going to give you a general idea and some language to use while you're getting ready to do that, okay? And I'm going to give you the chance to look at a couple of different presentations so that you have an idea of what an example presentation looks like, okay? So that's kind of in the second half, all right? In the first half, I'm just going to go through each of the parts. We're going to look at some points to help you get started and also help you as you're designing your presentation, all right? And like I said, finally, we're going to look at some things to avoid, all right? And from there, we'll go on to examples, all right? So just everybody okay with how we're going? You okay with the structure? Okay. All right. So from that, okay, just keeping that in mind, the how academic writing is in English, just keep that in your mind, okay? It might look something like this, all right? So your beginning is, like I said, introduction. You're going to talk about your topic, maybe in general. You're bringing the audience in, you bring them down to your specific topic, okay? So you might have a thesis statement, you might have research questions. You're pulling them in, you're gonna pull them in, okay? And then you're gonna go to the body part, which in writing would mean that you're gonna talk about the literature review. You're gonna talk about any research design or methodology that you're using, okay? And any data, so raw data, you're not making an opinion about the data, you're just looking at the data in general, okay? And as you start moving towards your conclusion, you're going to start making interpretations of this data, okay? And if you're already writing research papers, you know this, okay? It's kind of, that's how it's structured, okay? You start making conclusions about what you've found in the data, right? You're trying to interpret what that means. And at the very end, you're going to say what you would like to do. What is your future research going to look like? Where could this go? Okay. So just keeping this in mind, okay, this is what academic writing looks like in English, okay? I'm going to switch it to what a presentation might look like in English, okay? And it's going to follow a very similar format, all right? So this might be the format. I just use the same exact chart, but you're going to begin again with an introduction, okay? You have some kind of greeting to welcome your audience, all right? You might explain the structure of your presentation, and I'll show you how to do that. And you might explain what the rules are for participation, okay? Just like you just heard me say, you can turn on your cameras, but please turn off your microphones, right? So you might start saying things like this right at the beginning, okay? And then you're gonna have the body of your presentation, which simply means you're gonna present the subject. So in the introduction, you're gonna start saying like, this is what I wanted to focus on. This is where my research led me. This is blah, 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 okay? Then in the body, it's gonna be a big chunk of your presentation. That's where you're gonna give all these main points that you wanna make about whatever topic it is, okay? So then you come to the very end, which is the conclusion of the presentation, okay? Similar to the one in writing, okay? You're going to summarize your presentation and thank the audience for coming. And you might, and I will show you, might say to them like where you might go with this, or ask the audience where they might go with this, okay? So I'm just gonna go back one slide, just look for a second. Just look for a second, oops. Sorry, here we go, okay? That's what it looks like in writing, okay? And this is what it looks like in speaking, okay? So just kind of get a sense of where we're going with this, okay? Okay, so from here, what I'd like to do is tell you that this is good news, right? If you're familiar with the structure of writing in English, okay, then switching over to a presentation structurally is not very different, okay? Just keep that in your mind. I know there are other things that you need to worry about, like speaking in English and talking in front of a crowd. I get it, okay? But what you're gonna do is you already have some of the structure in your head, maybe, all right? And you're gonna use that to help you as you build your presentation, okay? So I'd like to just go through, I picked out 5 different points that I'd like to highlight in presentations. And I'm going to give you some language to use that you might use for each part of the presentation. I forgot to say at the beginning, but I do have a handout. I do have a document for you at the end. It has all of this information on it. All right. So if you're quickly taking notes, good job. Good job. But I'm also going to share it with you. So you're welcome to just listen and take notes if you want to. It's always helpful. But I will share with you my document at the end, and it has all of this information on it. Okay. So I'd like to look at 5 different parts of a presentation. I'm just going to list them here. Okay. So the first is the greeting. It may sound funny to mention that, but we need to mention that because it is an important part. Okay. Then from there, you're going to move into the introduction, and I will tell you more about what that looks like. Okay. Then you're going to move to the body of the presentation. Just like in writing, the body of the presentation is a big part where you're going to share your ideas, share whatever conclusions you made from your research, and you're going to hit some key points that you want to talk about your topic. All right. From there is the conclusion of the presentation. Okay, a little bit different from the conclusion of your research. All right. The conclusion of the presentation means you're gonna close it up, right? You might summarize your key points, and you might what's called a call to action. I'll tell you more about that. You might make a request to the crowd about your research. Okay. And finally, most importantly, you're going to have a question and answer session. Okay. So please just go through each of these with me and look at the language that is being used. All right. And from there, we can ask questions and think about how it's formatted. And we'll go on to look at some examples eventually. Okay. So I'm going to start with a greeting. I know you know how to do this, but I just want to hit some key points that you might hi to the crowd, right? And you heard me do this as well. I said my name, I said my title, and I said where I'm working, right? Okay. I didn't do that on purpose. I just did it. Okay. So you're going to do the same thing. All right. Why is this important? Because it introduces you to the audience, of course, but it gives you the chance to give yourself credibility. And what I mean is by stating where you work, what your research is in, whatever that is, it's going to instantly give you credibility. And the people that are there are going to say, oh, okay, he knows about macrobiology. He knows about this, okay? So they're going to instantly connect with you, all right? It might look something like this, all right? So you might say, good morning, my name is blah, blah, blah. I am a professor, I'm a PhD student, I'm a fellow, whatever it is, okay? Say the place that you're working, all right? And then if you want to, and then sometimes say where you are, all right? International conferences are full of people from all over the world, all right? You will be with other people from all over the world, right? Because sometimes it's a good reference point to say actually where you are in the world and where your research is coming from, okay? All right, so from there, we're gonna look at the introduction. The introduction is a chance to grab the audience's attention, all right? So just like you do in writing, it's almost exactly the same. We talk about hooking the reader, sorry. You're gonna grab the attention of the listeners, all right? So it's a really interesting chance for you to bring some interest and some enthusiasm to whatever your topic is, okay? So what we generally do in the introduction is, like I said, in the writing, you introduce your topic out here, all right? And then you start to bring it down, okay? I study biology, but really I focus on this. Or my background is in education, but I focus on this, okay? So you start to pull them into your presentation, okay? And you're going to explain what your specific area of expertise is, okay? So think writing is the same, the introduction in speaking is the same, okay? And then you're gonna start to say to them, like, this was a challenge that I found, or this was the issue that I found in whatever research, okay? If you've been to some of my other presentations, I talked about finding the gap in the research, okay? So you're gonna say, like, after doing X amount of research, I found this, or this was still a problem when I did whatever, okay? So you're still pulling them in, You want them to be interested in your topic, okay? And you might state the current research. So if you've already done the research paper about this topic, your literature review is all the current research, all right? And what you're saying to them is like, I know about this, but this was still a problem. Or I studied this, but I still had a question about this. And you're going to say that to them, okay? And that's going to draw interest into why you want to talk about this topic, okay? We're going to keep going about the introduction. So you're going to explain what your presentation's purpose is, all right? So think about what I did at the beginning. I went through my agenda. That's my purpose, right? So you're going to say that to them. This is what I want to talk about today. This is why I want to talk about it and why it's interesting to you. You might share a story. You might share your angle on it, okay? You might also say, just like you heard me say, you might set the stage. And what that means is you're going to talk about what the time limit is. You're going to talk about how you want them to participate or not, okay? And you might say to them that you have a handout at the end. I have all this information on the document for you at the end, okay? Sometimes in big conferences, someone will be presenting you before you go up. And sometimes they say for you, at this conference, there are no questions during during the presentation. Please wait until afterwards. They might say for you, there will be a handout at the end, okay? If that's the case, then you don't need to say this part. If it's not the case, you can go back and just hit some of these key points just for yourself and just as a reminder for the audience. What the key point here is for the introduction is you need to think about what do you want the audience to learn or understand by the end of your presentation, okay? It's just like when you're writing. What do you want someone to know or understand by the end of your research paper? It's almost exactly the same, okay? This time you're speaking it, it's maybe in a shorter time, so the listener doesn't have a lot of time to process the information outside of when they're in your presentation, okay? Okay, and I just want to point out a style point. I'm not sure if this is common in Brazil, but for English presentations, it's often common that the researcher will present a personal story or some connection as to why they got interested in this topic. All right. Remember that you're there for the audience and you want to share with them your research. So the more that you can make it something relatable to them, the more that you can add these pieces, you'll have more audience engagement and they'll get more out of it. Okay. So sometimes this point is at the beginning of the presentation, and sometimes it comes more in the body of the presentation. You can decide. All right. This is just a suggestion, but it's something that you could add to give your presentation a little more relatability. Okay. So for this part, how are you going to start? Just like in writing, you're going to use a hook. If you don't know what that means, it means you're simply going to try to grab the reader. In this case, you're going to try to grab the listener. Okay. So you might ask them a question, right? How many people here have done whatever? Okay. Or isn't it crazy that whatever happens? All right. Or you might tell a story, or you might use an image. Okay. It's really up to you how you're going to start. But remember, the first slide, the very beginning of your presentation is when you're grabbing the listener's attention and you're trying to bring them in. Okay. So as you keep going, you're going to start to introduce your topic. And you might say something like, today I'd like to talk about, or specifically I'll be focusing on, and you go through the specific points. And you might then share, like we said, the reason why this is interesting to you or the reason why you'd like to focus on this topic And you might link in the literature review, that piece that's missing for you, or something personal as to why it's of interest to you. Okay. So again, you're pulling them in. You're still in the introduction. You're trying to pull them in, right? Want to show them why this is interesting to you. And a lot of times you are very passionate about what you research. You have to make sure that that comes across when you're presenting as well. So structuring it in a certain way will let you do that, okay? And you might add a personal story. So as you keep going, you're gonna start stating all the main points, all right? So think about how I did my agenda. I said, these are my main points, right? So I'm just gonna list them down. For you, you're gonna list them as well. I'd like to talk about this topic. I'd like to focus on this. My first point is this, and you're gonna give more information, okay? You're going to say all of your points at the beginning. So I'll be exploring this, this, and this in my presentation today, okay? That means the listener is like, oh, okay, if I'm taking notes, I might want to take note on that because he's going to talk about that or she's going to follow up on this, okay? You want to pay attention to that, all right? And then sometimes presenters say, by the end of this presentation, I hope you have a better understanding of blah, 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 okay? So they kind of put this wish or this hope. So by the end of their presentation, that they hope that you got that information out of their presentation, all right? It's also kind of telling them to make sure that they hit all of these points. Because for you to make that conclusion, you need to be able to understand all of these different points that they're going to present, okay? All right, and also, like I said, you're going to set the stage in the introduction. That means that you're gonna say something like, during this 2-hour presentation, during these next 15 minutes, whatever it is, I'd like to request that you please wait until the end to ask questions.
You need to be able to understand all of these different points that they're going to present.
Hello.
All right. And also, like I said, you're going to set the stage in the introduction.
Okay. There's a bit of an echo with my voice. How's everybody doing now that we're back here? You okay? You okay? Yeah?
All right.
Yeah? All right. Thank you. All right. So we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, so what you might do is during this presentation, I'd like to wait until the end to for you to ask questions, okay? And then you might say, I'll be providing you with a handout at the end. This is just language that you could possibly use while you're beginning to talk about your topic, okay? Okay, so we're gonna move on. And what I want you to think about in the introduction is you're going on a journey, okay? You wanna take the listener with you. That means that you need to drive in a certain direction. You need to take them with you. Most importantly, you need to give them a map, all right? So if you don't structure your presentation, it will be difficult for them to follow, and it will be difficult for them to understand what your conclusions are, okay? So think about, like, in the introduction, I want to do this, right? I have to pay attention. I have to say these different things, all right? This is very cultural. It's very English based because English is so linear. It's like we say this, and then we say this, and then we say this, okay? That's just our style. But we think it's a clear way to follow. And we think we need to help the listener to follow what our point is, okay? So keep this in mind. You want to take them with you. You're going on this beautiful ride, but you need to make sure you're clear about the map. You need to be the GPS for them while they're listening to you, okay? And at the end of this presentation, you can say to me if I was a good GPS for you or not, okay? So you need to pay attention to that. Okay, So we're going to move on to the body of the presentation. All right. The body of the presentation is where you start to explain your research questions, where you start to give more information about your research design and methodology. It's sometimes that you're sharing raw data and you're sharing your conclusions. So don't get it mixed up. These are conclusions from your research, not conclusions of the presentation. Okay. So this is conclusions from your research, what you learned after doing whatever research you were doing, or what conclusions you've come to as you're working on it, right? And what it means is that you're going to state the key points from your study and give any evidence or give any supporting details to help you. All right. This is really direct. So in your introduction, you said, I want to talk about this, 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 and this. You're going to go back to whatever the first point is, and you're going to expand on it. All right. And you're going to give some supporting information, some supporting details to make that point clear. Okay. So your introduction, you're saying all these different pieces, then you're going to elaborate, you're going to give more information for each of them. Okay. Your body part of your presentation is a big chunk. Like I said, it's a really important part. Okay. Hi, Maria. Do you have a question? Go ahead. Hi.
I have a question. I didn't understand how to state a key points from my study. I need to choose which are the topics I'm going to present.
Yeah, so if you're looking at, that's a really good question. If you're looking at your research and you're going down to your conclusion, okay, you're going to think like, what are my main points from my conclusion in your actual written document, okay? And then when you go to your presentation, you're going to try to get to those points. So your introduction is going to be, I want to talk about this topic, specifically this topic. This was my research question, and this is what I found out. Okay. So your body parts of your presentation is going to give more details about what you found out. Does that make sense? You okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Good question. Good question. Okay. So as we keep moving along, okay, the key point here is to be really specific and match what you said in your intro. All right. So if in the introduction you said, I'm going to talk about this, this, and this, and you go to the body and you don't talk about that, all right, remember the GPS, it doesn't work. You're not giving them a clear direction on how to go along with your journey, go along on this journey with you. Okay. So whatever you say in the introduction has to be really matched and be really clear about what you say in the body part of your presentation. Okay. All right. So I want to point out a style point. This is true in English. I'm not sure in Portuguese, but in English, sometimes we begin with the most important point, and sometimes we end with the most important point. You're going to have to decide. Okay. We do this in writing and we do this in presenting. Okay. So you're going to decide which point is the most important point and where am I going to put it? I would suggest putting it at the end because you're bringing the listener in, or you could start with it and then really support any examples that you have or give evidence to support that, whatever the key point is. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I do mention some style points just to think about as you're thinking about your presentation. Okay, so what you're going to actually say when you're doing this, these are just some suggestions, okay? You might start by saying, I want to begin by discussing blah, blah, blah. Or I want to begin by explaining whatever it is, okay? And then you might say, by doing this research, I first discovered, and you're going to say what your first point is. All right. To illustrate this topic is another way to start off. I'd like to begin by discussing, and you're going to say what your first point is. Okay. If you're unfamiliar with the word illustrate, it just means like to paint a picture. Okay, you're going to show more details by explaining whatever the point is in detail. Okay, so then you're going to move on to your next point. All right, so maybe you know this. You're going to say something like, as you can see, you might make a short summary of the first point, and then from there you're going to go on to the next point. Okay, so if this feels like it's really boxy, or it's really you know, like we say this, then we say this, when we say this, it is true. And we think, like I said, that you need to tell the listener where you're going with your research. Okay, you need to tell the listener, hey, pay attention, this is my next point. Okay, and we do that really specifically, and we're really direct about it. Okay, you should not expect your listener to guess what your point is. All right, you have to tell them really clearly. Okay, so you might say, you know, my first point was this, and you know, the conclusion was this, and now my research led me to whatever the next point is. Okay, and then you're going to say that point. You can go into your third point, your fourth point, whatever it is. Okay, and all of these points will depend on how much time you have. If you have a lot of time, you might have more time to actually explain in more detail. If you have a short time, and I've seen it happen, sometimes presenters are only given 20 minutes or 15 minutes. And they're like, well, I can't do it. You know, I have all this research, I have all these beliefs, and I want to share them. So you're going to have to be really, really, really careful and really decisive about what is your main point. What is the main message you want to share about whatever research it is? Okay. Okay. So another way to just give examples, and these are just some ideas. If you have to give examples while you're talking, I'm just giving you some phrases to use. Maybe you're very familiar with them. Okay. But if you get, you know, if you get tongue-tied, or if you hesitate, you might feel like, oh gosh, you know, how do we say that? Okay, these are just some ideas. Okay, and it might give you like what to say after you say. So you're going to say like, my next point is this, and blah, 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 blah. For example, and then you're going to explain it. Okay, or to illustrate this, imagine blah, 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 and you're going to explain more about it. Okay, so I thought this might be helpful as you're thinking about the body of your presentation, and it might just help you to think about how to bring up the next point. Okay, I also thought maybe you might have to clarify something or to reinforce something. So you might say something like, you know, in other words, my research led me to this, or after doing this research, I realized this. Okay, or what I mean is, or to be clear, and you're just going to explain it again. If this sounds silly, we do this a lot in English because we want to be really direct about what our point is. And we might say it again. No, it sounds crazy. We might say it again to just make sure that we're really clear. Okay. You wouldn't say it again in the exact same words. You would use different words, but same meaning. Okay. So as you're moving on to your final points, whatever that is, okay, you might say something like, my final point from my research is this, or like I said, you can choose. It's a style point. You can lead with your most important or end with your most important. If you choose to end with it, you might say something like, most importantly, blah, blah, blah. And this is what you really want your audience to take away with them, right? You want to make sure that they get this point, okay? So you might say, most importantly, in doing this research, I discovered, and say whatever it is, okay? It's up to you how you're going to structure that. You might also say something like, so I talked about this, this, and this, but my most important point is whatever it is, right? And you're going to go from there. Okay. So we're going to move on from the body to the conclusion. So this is our fourth part of giving a presentation in English. All right. So think about the conclusion as a way to sum up your main ideas and to give these key references, key evidence to your main message. Okay. I know, again, it sounds silly. Why do I have to say it again? This is just what we do. All right. It's how it's structured in English as we give presentations. Okay. You might also, it's something called a call to action. You might also ask the audience. You might say what you think is next, or you might say a call to action, meaning something that you wish would happen, or something that you hope to do more research about and invite them to join you. Or you might just throw out a thought-provoking idea. Okay. So all of these things happen right at the end, and it means that you're trying to get them to walk away and still be thinking about what you were talking about. Okay. So remember, in the introduction and the greeting, you're pulling them in. The body, you're showing them everything. Okay. And then the conclusion, you're saying, here's what I talked about, but maybe we could continue this research this way. Or I'm thinking about building a project about whatever, and you're going to ask them to go there with you. Okay. Because who knows, maybe people in the audience are researching the same things, or they have another angle about your particular subject or your shared subject. Okay. So you're going to invite them to think about this picture in a bigger way. Okay. The key point here is it's a chance for you to reinforce your message. All right. Do not skip the conclusion. All right. So you may feel like your heart is beating so fast when you're giving your presentation. Oh my gosh, can I make it? And you get to the conclusion and you're like, okay, thank you, bye. Right. You don't want to do that. You really want to close it. Just like in writing, you want to close what you're saying, meaning that you're going to not be talking about that topic anymore. So you have to tell the reader that. You have to tell the listener that. Okay. So don't skip the conclusion. It's a really important part. And it's a way for you to make this call of action. Okay. To make a request of the audience. Okay. So just like I said, a call to action is it's a very popular way to end. It's also popular in writing, all right? And it's asking the audience to really keep thinking about your topic, all right? You want to make sure that they're going away thinking about your topic so that they will want to know more. They will look forward to your next presentation. They want to know where your research is going, okay? Or maybe they're discovering something around the same thing for themselves. Okay. So these are, maybe you also do this in Portuguese, but we do this a lot in English. So it might be something to pay attention to. Okay. So how to finish? What language are you going to use? So you might say something like, as I come to the end of my presentation, today I talked to you about this, that, and the other. Okay, and you're going to say your points again. Okay, or you're going to say something like, as we come to a close, here's what I set out to do today. You're going to say your points again. Okay, and you're going to say this call to action. Here's what I hope you walk away with. All right, or this is tied back to what you hoped that they would get out of your presentation. Right. So you said at the beginning in the introduction, I hope you walk away from my presentation with blah, whatever that is. Okay. Thinking more about or understanding more about whatever that is. You're going to come back to that because you want to close that point. Okay. And you might say again, what was your overall point? Why did you give this presentation? All right, so you're going to be really clear and very direct about why you gave the presentation. You're going to say it again. All right. You might also, like I said, ask them to take action, which means you might ask them to do something like this. To close, I'd like to ask you to do this one thing. All right. And you, whatever it is, you know, research about blah, 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 or follow me on Instagram, or, you know, whatever it is, you're going to ask them to be more engaged with you. Okay. You might also say, and finally, before you leave the conference today, please take 2 minutes to, maybe you have a survey at the end. Maybe you need that information for further research for yourself or for your school, wherever you're doing your research from. Okay, so you're going to ask them at the very end to still engage with you. Okay, or simply as you leave today, please think about, and you might just pose a question to them, because you might want to ask them to continue on their journey of this research with you. Okay, and finally, you're going to thank your audience, which I'm sure you know to do. Okay. You might share your contact information, which might be at the end of your PowerPoint. If you're using PowerPoint, it might be at the end of your documents, if you're giving a handout. And you might say to them, please contact me if you would like to share information or talk more about this topic. Okay, so you can say that very directly to them, and you're coming to the close. You're almost to the close of your full presentation. Okay. And then we get to the question and answer section, right? A lot of students, they really hate the question and answer section, but this is a really important part and a really important chance for you to learn more about what your audience understood about your presentation. And they might ask you questions that might further your own research, something that you're not thinking about, okay? So it's a chance for you to get this feedback on your presentation. It's also, like I said, it can help you think about furthering your research or looking at your research from a different angle, okay? So don't shy away from the question and answer session. It's not a chance for someone to, you know, question all of your research. It's really a chance for you to learn more about how they understood what you were talking about. And one point is, when you're in the question and answer section, you're going to just be as honest as you can. If you have not covered whatever they're asking you about in your research, then simply say that. This is not, you know, this is not the way my research was going, or this is not what I focused on in my research. Yeah, right? So you can say that. You can say that, and you can tell them very directly, like, that's not how I looked at it, or that's not what I was focusing on. Okay, it is okay to do that. You are not expected to know everything about your field, even though we want to, right? But you're not expected to know everything about your field. Okay, so how you might answer, these are just some thoughts. Oops. You might say, you know, that's a really interesting point, or that's a really interesting question. And you're just going to say from whatever your research is, or what you've learned so far from your research. Okay. Or you're going to say something like, that's an interesting idea. I haven't looked into it yet, but you know, I will in the future, or I hope to get there, or whatever it is, right? You can share your ideas from there. Okay. Or you might question back to the person that asked you a question. You might say to them, well, do you have any suggestions for how I could learn more about blah, blah, blah? And they might be able to help you with that. Okay. And finally, you could say something like, whatever you think the answer is, you know, from, you know, you might be feeling like, oh my gosh, you know, I don't really know that answer. But what you can say is, it may be because, and you give an answer, but you're going to look into that even more, or you're going to try to discover more about that topic on your own. Okay. So just kind of keep these things in mind, that they are perfectly normal to say and perfectly honest to say, and they happen all the time. So don't feel like you need to know everything and that you need to know all the research that's out there. Nobody does. all right? And if someone asks you a very difficult question, you are welcome to ask the question back to them, or say, I'm not really looking at that, or I didn't study about that, or that's not where my research is focused. Okay. And then you might form a relationship, a friendship with that person, and they might help you understand where they were coming from. Okay. It might happen, right? Okay. Okay. So one thought point is the audience is not there to judge you, but to learn from you. Okay. So I say this because a lot of times students panic about the question and answer section. I want to say session and I'm saying section, but the audience is not there. They're there to learn. Okay. And you're there to share what you have to learn. All right. And like I said, you'll not be expected to know everything about your field and not be expected to have all that knowledge in your head. Okay. A presentation is one example, one part, one showing of your research. With a written document, of course, you have more time, right? Someone can sit with a reading and they can analyze it in more detail, the same as you can do, right? But with a presentation, it's a little bit faster. It's a little bit of a quick picture of what's going on in your research. So there's no way that you could explain everything, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind. If this section is one that makes you panic a lot, or you think, oh, like I'm gonna have to answer these questions in English and I can't do it, just remember, you have ways and you have language to use to counter it, or to simply say where you are, okay? Okay, so we're back on our road. And how did we do with our map? How are you feeling about giving presentations in English? Does anyone have any questions before we go on? Okay, yeah. Gabriel, do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
I have a presentation this year in the US as well, and I'm quite afraid of doing this presentation because there are going to be a lot like specialists in my area, and I'm only like a graduated. I don't have like a master. I've just candidated to a master.
Okay.
And like my topic, it's quite sensible, and I'm worried about people that are specialized in this area not judging me, but making like observations that I could not answer, because I don't have the knowledge enough to do and something like that. And during the presentation, my teacher said to me that normally I don't need to explain all the steps that I'm doing, or all the meanings of the research and etc. Because during the graduation, normally we have to explain all these parts, but in this case, I don't think so. So what would you advise me in this case, and also in the part that they can make questions for me? I'm quite afraid for them to doing questions and I don't have the answers,
Right. So that's a really, really good question, and really good situation if you're just starting out with your research. I would just advise that you be really clear about where you are in your whole process. Meaning, like at the beginning, when you start your introduction, you're going to say, I'm a graduate student and I'm just beginning my research on blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you're going to give them the background right away. And maybe some people in the audience might be able to help you or to further your research, or have a similar topic. But then when you go through your points, just like your advisor said, it's going to depend on the time limit, okay? But you're going to explain as much as you can, very clearly, very directly. So if you had an hour, it's very different from if you had 20 minutes, of course. But if you only had 20 minutes, you're going to pick out whatever points of your process, and you're going to say, this is how I did it. You know, I did this, I did this, I did this, and this is what I found out. Okay. And when you go to your conclusion, just like we said, you're going to say to them, like, this is what I've found so far, or this is where my research is leading me now, and I hope to do more. And you might say to them where you want to go with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot. Thank you.
Welcome. And then when you get to the question and answer part, I know it's scary. I've been to a couple international conferences and I felt the same. And I felt like this, you know, I didn't know enough about my field to be able to answer questions or to be really clear. However, I felt like the questions that were asked of me helped me to further my research, and helped me to kind of be a little bit, look at something from a different perspective. So I would say try to have some some key phrases for you. So this is what I'm focusing on, and you know, that's a good point, but this is how I looked at it. And then just kind of protect yourself in some ways, but use your language to say, like, you know, I'd love to learn more about that, and maybe in the future, so, something like that. But like I said, remember that for the most part, researchers are not there to be like, you didn't talk about this, you know, why did you do? They're not there to do that, okay? They're there to learn from you. And there might be people in the audience that can help you further whatever you're studying. And you might have looked at something from a very different angle and they didn't look at it in the same way, okay?
Okay.
So
Perfect.
you have a right, and you have whatever you have to say matters. It's important to go there with that idea. Like, I'm going to share what I know right now, right?
Okay.
And maybe at the end, what you can grow, you know, where you want to go with it is really important. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you a lot.
You're welcome. Really good question. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have a question before we go on? You're welcome to ask.
Will it be like this a brief presentation, like you used a very a lot of examples of and expressions we could use in our presentation? Will be there a paper or something like this that we could use?
Yes, good question. Yeah, so at the very end, Maria, I'm going to give you a paper with all of this, what I shared on the PowerPoints, and it has all of that language, if that's helpful to you, okay? I'll give it to you right at the end, okay? All right, any other questions?
I was wondering how to adjust this formula for a shorter presentation.
It's a really good question. So what I would do, and this is kind of funny because I had it really short and then I added more information. So I would focus on, and I can show you, but in the introduction, I would just say, like, you know, this is my main message. This is my main point. This is what I'm looking at. And these are the 3 points that I want to cover today. And then so your introduction is going to be a little bit shorter. And once you get to the body, you're going to go over those 3 points and whatever examples you have. And it's going to be hard, yes, because you're going to have to make everything really concise and really compact. But you can do it by pulling out what are the main points, what are your main findings, okay? And you're going to say that in the body. And then the conclusion, you're going to say, you know, I covered this, this, and this, and I'd like to keep moving in this direction. You're going to try to open it up a little bit, okay? So Aguinaldo, today you're going to look at a couple examples that are only 3 minutes long. So that might give you a better sense of what they covered and how they covered it, okay? Yeah. Any other questions? You okay?
Can I do just one more?
Of course, of course.
Okay. I also have not a problem, but the theory that I'm using on the research, it's not enough to answer the start question.
Okay.
Because it's quite complicated.
Okay.
And do you think that it will be better for me to explain this in the beginning of the presentation, like to let this clear, like as a challenge or a gap to develop this topic, or in the final of the presentation?
I would do it right at the beginning. Really good question. I would do it at the beginning. Okay. Because you're going to say, like, I'm looking at it from this. However, there's still this whatever big piece, or there's still this gap, and, you know, or current research is still trying to figure this out, but this is what I'm looking at. Okay. Yeah. I would say it right at the beginning. Okay. So introduce yourself, say kind of your overall topic, and keep bringing it down to your important points. Okay. And then when you say whatever that important point is, or whatever your focus is, I would say right then, like, you know, it's not clear to me about this, or I'm, you know, research is still being done on this, and you're going to say it. Okay. Because then the listener right away will know, oh, okay, he's still doing this, or, you know, that's a good point, because the research is kind of all over the place, or whatever it is. It will help them to focus it while they're focusing on what you're saying. Yeah, really good question. Really good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Okay. So if we don't have any more questions, we're into the second hour. Okay. And what we're going to do next is I want to give you just some steps to take as you're getting ready to work on your presentation, and then some tips for your delivery, and some things to avoid when you're giving your presentation. And like I said, I have some examples for you to look at with a partner, so that you can look at and see kind of how these different researchers actually did their presentations and how they focused on it. Okay, is everybody okay? Yeah? Okay. That was a double thumbs up. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go back. We're going to go back. All right, so how are you going to get started when you're getting ready to give your presentation? Okay, I know this is like a really daunting task, but it's something that you can organize. And if you go through each part, you can organize each part and really get a handle on what you want to talk about. So I just want to make some points. So you want to think about what is your overall purpose? Do you want to perform something? Are you training your audience about something? Are you trying to convince them of some point? Or are you trying to sell something? Okay. I would say with research, you're trying to either persuade them about something. You might be training them about something that you've studied about. Maybe not performing and maybe not selling, but it could be, right? Okay. So you're going to think about, like, what am I doing here? What is my point? Okay. From there, I talk about this a lot, but you're going to think about what is your topic, who is your audience, and what's the purpose? All right. So your topic is, what do I want to talk about? All right. Think about big picture here. Okay. My audience, when you go to conferences, it's sometimes hard to judge who your audience is. If they're all scientists and you're a scientist and they know about your research, then you know that you have to cater your presentation in a certain way. You have to organize it in a certain way because they already know what you're talking about. However, if you don't know who your audience is and it's open to the public, then you're going to have to explain different pieces of it. Do not assume that your audience knows what you're talking about, all right? You have to be really direct, and you have to tell them, like, oh, this means this, and the way I'm referring to this is this, okay? You're going to have to tell them. And finally, you're going to think about, what is your purpose? And what I mean about that is, I want to talk about this topic, but why? Why do I want to talk about this topic? What do I want to share about this topic? Okay. So you're going to think about these three things. I talk about this a lot, but it's called the TAP, the topic, audience, and purpose, because those questions will help you really narrow down and really focus your presentation. Okay. As you keep going, you're going to ask yourself, say to yourself, like, what do I want people to know about my research? What is my message? All right. I would say try to write it down in one sentence. What do I want people to know from this presentation? If you can't do that, then you're not clear about what you want to talk about. Okay. So once you get your main message, you're going to think about what 3 points about that message would you like to share? So I'm thinking for this comment, I'm thinking that you have a very short presentation, okay? If you have more time, of course, you can add more information. But overall, for both a longer presentation and a shorter one, you need to be clear with yourself. What is my main message? And what do I want to say about my message? When someone walks away from my presentation, what do I want them to know? What do I want them to remember? Be clear with yourself so that that comes across when you're doing the presentation. Okay. I would say outline your ideas if that helps you. All right. So by outline, just write on your paper, this is the topic, this is what I want to say, this is my main message, draw your lines, whatever it is, whatever helps you. But make sure you have somewhere in your head, on paper, wherever it is, that you know what you want to talk about. Okay. Don't go into a presentation and be thinking, maybe I should talk about that, or, they accepted me for this conference, so maybe I'm going to go that way. No. You make that decision before you go in. All right. Have a plan. If you've gotten accepted at an international conference, usually you've already said, this is my topic, this is what I want to talk about. Do that. Do not change it. Okay. Do not add all these other things that are relevant to that. Do whatever that is. Okay. And then decide how you're going to hook the listener. Okay. So do you want to show a picture at the beginning? Do you want to show a short video? Ask a question. All right. You can think about this. It's sometimes a little bit difficult. In some of the examples you're going to look at today, you're going to see how they gave a hook at the beginning. You can just look, all right, and see if that works for you, okay? And finally, you're going to build your presentation within the frame and the limitations that they give you. If they ask you to use a certain PowerPoint, you have to use that PowerPoint. If they ask you to only talk for 15 minutes, only talk for 15 minutes. That means you have to practice and make sure it's only 15 minutes, because you don't want to go through your presentation and not say these really important points because you didn't pay attention to the time. All right. And I'll talk about that in a moment, but pay attention to whatever they're saying. You need to do this. They're always very specific. You need to do this, this, this. You need to upload your document, whatever it is. You need to pay attention to that. Okay. And build your presentation that way. All right. As you prepare your slides, you can also think about something called death by PowerPoint. Maybe you're thinking today, MB, this is death by PowerPoint. I hope not. Death by PowerPoint means that you're using too much text on your PowerPoint. All right. There's a gentleman that works for Apple, and he suggested the 10, 20, 30 rule. Does anyone know this rule? What it is that if you have 10 slides, you're going to talk 10 slides for 20 minutes, and that your font is always going to be at least 30. Okay. So 10 slides, talk for 20 minutes, and your font on your on your slides is always going to be at least 30. I could not do that for this presentation, okay? So you can give me a penalty because I'm not practicing what I'm telling you to do, right? Okay, but this is one suggestion, all right? You want to make sure that your PowerPoints are really clear, that your slides are really clear, and there's not too much text to share. If you use a short or audio clip or video clip at the beginning, make sure that it's really short and important to what you want to say. Do not distract your presentation by starting off with something that is not relevant to what you want to say, okay? Remember, you're going to keep in your mind, what is your main point? What is your main point? What would you like to say about it, okay? If this little video does something else, you don't want to use that, right? Keep it simple if you can. Proofread each slide, okay? I've caught myself giving presentations and I haven't read again all of my slides, so pay attention, all right? This is your one chance, your one shot, okay? So you want to make sure that your slides are really clear, all right? All right, as you prepare for the real presentation, so you're practicing, you're getting ready for the real presentation, all right? You're going to watch your timing, all right? That means, like I said, if they said 15 minutes, do not go over 15 minutes. Maybe practice for 10, all right? But do not go over the time and think that the conference is going to allow you to keep talking. They won't. They're going to cut you off, okay? Follow the guidelines that they give you. They are, like I said, they're very specific. All right, so just be aware, just be really clear about what the guidelines are. And practice and practice and practice, okay? If you're someone that can use the slides to help you keep talking and you're familiar enough with the topic and you feel confident enough, then you need to practice a little. If you're not that person and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't talk about this topic, I'm panicking, okay? Then you need to practice more than that, all right? The main thing is you are doing all this wonderful research, so you want to make sure that your presentation gets this research out there, all right? So don't, miss the timing and not get to your main point, all right? So you need to practice and you need to pay attention to that before you start. As you're thinking about what your delivery of your presentation is, I'm just going to make a couple different points. I talked a lot about bringing your audience in, pulling them into your presentation. You can do this by connecting with them at the beginning. The main thing is that they're going to see your passion for your topic by whatever you're saying, however your body language is, all right? So just kind of keep that in mind, that you want to make sure that your passion, your enthusiasm for this topic is translated over to them, okay? You can always link your theme together. So in English, we use a lot of transition words. Make sure that you're connecting one point to the other. That's why I gave you some language to use for that, okay? Just make sure that you're doing that. Be very direct. If you only have 15 minutes and you have to hit 3 points, then you're going to have to be really, really concise. My topic is this, and I want to talk about this, this, and this. Okay, and you're going to have to say it very clearly. Like I said, if you have more time, you'll have more time to expand. You still, however, need to be direct. Remember, at the end, your audience is going to walk away. What are they going to remember? What do you want them to take away with them about your topic? All right, so make sure you're very clear about it, okay? Also, be confident in what you're saying. Easier said than done, of course, all right? If you're feeling worried about your English level, if you're feeling worried about understanding your topic well enough to talk about it, that's really natural. That's really natural. And Conference goers, people who go to conferences know this and they understand this because a lot of them give presentations too. Okay. But try to convey and show your passion and your confidence about your topic by just what you say. Okay. And just be very clear about that. Okay. And I would say, try to be aware of your voice and your body language. The audience is in front of you, of course, okay? So you're trying to engage with them. Yes, it is different virtually, and I have some points about that, but you're trying to keep engaging with them, keep making sure that they're understanding what you're talking about. Stay strong, or sorry, start strong, all right? So if you grab the listener's attention right from the beginning, you can keep it throughout the presentation. But don't start off shy or worried about, oh, you know, blah, blah, blah. Forget that for a moment, if you can, and start off with, this is what I want to talk about, and this is why I want to talk about it, okay? So try to be really clear, because that will help you step on a good, confident foot as you step forward. Don't rush. So this has happened to me many times, that I get into a presentation and I start rushing, all right? What I would suggest is, if you get into a presentation and you feel like, oh my God, we have no more time and I have to get to my conclusion, what I would suggest is jumping and saying, this is my conclusion, these are my main points, this is my main message, all right? So sometimes if you allow people to ask you questions, that might take up more time, that might change the direction you're going in just because of the way you're thinking about whatever they're asking you. And you might suddenly think, oh no, I only have 2 more minutes, right? So what I would do is just go jump in your PowerPoint and jump to your main points, okay? It happens. It might happen. All right. Don't panic if it does. It happens. It's really natural. Okay. But you want to make sure, that whomever is there in your audience is going to walk away with whatever key points you want them to walk away with. So make sure you say it. Make sure you say it very directly. This is why, this is what, whatever it is, you're going to say it really clearly. Okay. Dress professionally. That may sound obvious, but it's really true to make a good first impression. And it also gives you a little more credibility in your field if people think that you're presenting in a certain way, okay? And then if you're presenting at an international conference, so this is particularly aimed at a US audience or a US conference setting, but if you're presenting somewhere else, I would ask you to consider some of the cultural differences, if you can, if you have time to, because they do vary, and they do vary in how people interpret your body language and how they're looking at you to understand what you're talking about. Okay, so just pay attention to that. And I would say as well, if you can, have a backup plan. So if your research doesn't work, if something happens to the computer, if your PowerPoint dies, whatever it is, make sure that you can, by yourself, talk about your presentation without any visual aid, without any help, okay? It's just one suggestion. It has happened to me, I think maybe twice, and the internet didn't work and the presentation didn't work. So I had to do everything from memory. So just be aware that it can happen even on the best days. And what you're going to have to do is just go for it, right? You still are there if you're in person. If it's virtual, it might be a different story, but you're still there and you still want to share your ideas, okay? So just try to have a backup plan. All right, so I'm just going to go through, because I want to get you to some examples, but just some thoughts for giving a presentation virtually. I think this is going to be more common. So you're listening to me all the way from the US giving you a presentation today, but this is going to be more common, and it might be more common for you to present your research this way, okay? So just pay attention. I would say use a very similar format. Think about how best to present an idea. Think about what you can show on your screen that's going to present your idea or your message very clearly. Okay. It's a little different if you haven't done it. It's a little different virtually because you have to think things through a little bit in a different way, and you have to make sure you share them in a certain way. I would say practice speaking to your camera. I know this is strange. You're speaking to yourself almost, or you're speaking to a small dot on your computer, but it is effective, and you can practice doing it and get better at it, okay? You might want to think about the lighting. You might also think about what's behind you and think about how that's presenting in your presentation, okay? You might also think about distractions. So being in a quiet space, making sure that you're able to present in a quiet space. All of these things are a lot of things to think about, but they are important so that you can get your message across. And pace yourself just means like to pay attention to the time and make sure that you're clear about what the time is, okay? That you're getting to the points that you need to. A couple other points about virtual conference presentations is make sure you include time for your conclusions. So make sure you get to your main points. And I know we don't like it, but make sure you save some time for questions, okay? So just like you saw me do, I built into my PowerPoint a space for questions. You can do the same. You can check in with your audience and make sure that they're understanding what you're talking about, okay? You can do that. It's another way to engage them, okay? Have tech support if you can, and just like with in-person presentations, have a backup plan if you can, okay? We never know what's going to happen until it's happening, and if you can try to have a plan B in your head so that you can be ready for that, okay? Okay, so just want to go over some mistakes to avoid, and then we're going to look at some examples together with your partner. So try to avoid, do not do this. Try not to do this, but you're going to try to avoid talking about yourself and talking to yourself. So virtually, it's easy to stare at yourself because your camera is on, but you're going to try to avoid doing that, okay? People are there to learn about your research and whatever ideas you have to share, okay? So just try to pay attention to that. Try not to read your presentation. It's very difficult not to read your presentation, okay? I put a lot of text on my slides, as you see today. These are points that I want you to pay attention to, okay? But if it were a presentation, I think maybe if I were in person, I might cut back on some of this and maybe use more pictures, okay? But this to me is more like a lesson. It's more like a teaching setting. So I'm giving you a lot of information on my PowerPoint, okay? So try not to read your presentation, and try not to show too much text. You can share with me at the end if I showed too much text on the PowerPoints, okay? You can give me your thoughts. You should show your passion for your topic, whatever it is, okay? So don't be shy about that. Researchers have a lot of wonderful ideas to share. And whomever you are, if you're not doing research or you're more of a practitioner, you're more practical, you like, whatever it is in your field, it's really important to share that. People love that. They respond to that, okay? You should remember to practice. Make sure that you're ready. Make sure that you know what you're talking about. Also, make sure you think about potential questions that someone might ask you, okay? And try to have a backup plan in place, and try to be confident about what you're saying, okay? Like I said, people who go to conferences, they are there to learn, and they're also presenters like you. So they are excited about what they're talking about, but they're also excited to learn what you're talking about, okay? So your confidence, your sharing, your passion will come across to them, and they'll want to know more, just like you want to know more when you go to a good presentation, okay? So don't be shy, like, oh, this is really business and I have to talk about it like this, okay? You can talk about it from whatever passion point you have, all right? You're doing the research about it because it means something to you, right? Bring that in, bring that in. Make sure you hit your points, but bring that in, bring in that story. I got interested in this because of whatever, and you share that, all right? People remember that, and people will look for you again because they want to know more about your research. You got it? Everybody okay? Yeah? Okay. So what I had planned for next was, and some of you are familiar with my teaching style, but what I had planned for us to do next is for us to work with a partner and work on a document to look at some example presentations. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. So if this sounds really scary to you, you're just going to say hi to your partner. And maybe you don't know your partner, that's okay. You're just going to say hi to your partner, and you're going to talk to them and try to answer these questions together. Okay. So on the second side of this paper, there are some example presentations. If you look right here, they're only 3 minutes long. I think the longest one is 10 minutes. Okay. So these first 3 are 3-minute presentations. This one is about 10 minutes. This one is 12 minutes, okay? And this is an example of a virtual presentation. It's about 10 minutes, okay? What you're gonna do is choose 2. We're gonna run out of time. Let's just say choose 1, okay? Watch the presentation with your partner and see if you can answer these questions. How did the speaker start the presentation? What was his or her main message? What did they want you to know? What 2 or 3 points did they tell you about this main message? Think about how they ended the presentation, and you can say to your partner, do you think they were successful or not? All right, you can discuss that with your partner. You're just taking a look, and you're gonna look at these examples and think about your own presentation, maybe coming up. Think about a future presentation for yourself. And you're going to use these examples to think about how you can organize your own presentation. If you have time, so I will come in and say hi to your group. If you have time, you can watch a second one, okay? So when you go into your groups with your partner, you just say hi to them, introduce yourself. There is always on the bottom of your screen, if you're not familiar with Zoom, there's a button that says you need help, and it will always come to me, and I can come to your group to help you, okay? But this is a chance for you to think about what we just learned about, and for you to think about looking at examples and looking at how people structure their presentations, okay? So first, before we do that, I'm going to put the handout in the chat for you, which means it has all of the information that I talked about on the PowerPoint, which is a lot of information, okay? There are resources at the end, all right, for you to refer to and to find out more about what I was looking at, okay? All right, and then I'm going to put this activity sheet in the chat for you. If you can stay, I'd be happy to send you off with a partner and just have a chance to look at these different presentations and think about some questions about them, okay? So take a look at those 2 handouts for one moment, okay? And I'm going to set you up into the breakout rooms, right? So just take a look while we're doing that. And then we're going to go from there, right? Is everybody okay with what you're going to do? Yeah? Okay. So we have about 25 more minutes, okay? So what you're going to do is take your time. There's no rush to go through. You can take your time, talk to your partner, and think about how whatever the presentation you're looking at, how it was organized, what their points were, okay? And then from there, you can just talk to your partner about if you thought it was a good presentation, if it was clear to you, if it helps you understand the format, okay? And I'll come in and say hi, but just go ahead and keep working and just see how you do with it, all right? When we come back at the very end, if you have any questions, then I'm happy to answer any questions and to look at the document that I gave you to show you where some resources are, okay? So a lot of people are running out of the class because they don't want to go to a breakout room, but let's just try it. Okay, here we go. How was it? Good? Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. All right. Okay, well, that was just the chance for you to look at a couple of different examples. Please, when you have more time, if you want to, you can look at some of the other examples. Some of them are a little bit old now, maybe 2013 or 2012, but still gives you an example of how they organize their presentation and what main points they tried to make while they were giving their presentation. Okay, so I hope some of them were helpful for you just to look at, just to have an idea of how it could be possible. Okay, so we are coming to the very end of our presentation. It was so nice to see you today. Does anyone have any questions as we're leaving right now? Any thoughts as we're leaving or anything you want to ask? Good? Yeah? Yeah? Okay, well, it was so nice to see you today. I wish you the best of luck in giving your presentations. Remember, you can structure it in a certain way, and that will help you, maybe, I hope, that will help you feel confident about what you're going to say and what you need to say about your topic, okay? So my contact information is at the end of that document. It's also going to be at the end of the PowerPoint, so please reach out to me if you have any more questions. I'd be happy to help you. And please look for other Education USA webinars that will be coming up in the next semester, and I'd be happy to see you again. Okay, so best of luck. Goodbye, everyone. Good luck. Take care.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye. See you.